today's webinar. My name is Paul Gannett, and I'm going to be introducing to you today the MX2300 series. And my goal is to help you understand how this logger operates and help you evaluate if it's the right logger for your applications. So in terms of a couple details on the webinar, we are going to run about 50 minutes, and that includes time for questions. And you will see on your control panel there's a panel for entering questions. Please feel free to enter your questions into that as we go along, and if it's relevant to what we're talking about at the time, I may address those questions then, or I may save them for the end of the presentation, where there'll be a kind of a more formal time for questions and answers. The webinar is being recorded, and we will make a copy of the recording available afterwards so that you can go back and refer to it. So this way you don't have to take notes now if you don't want to. So here's our agenda. I'm going to start out with an overview of the 2300 series, give you a little tour of the product, go into some key features and specifications, talk about the software and how the logger operates, and then I'll do some positioning of the HOBO MX2300 versus some of the other products in our line to help you choose the one that's best for your application. And then talk a little bit about applications, and as I mentioned, there'll be time for questions. Just for the benefit of those who don't know us, we are a world leader in the production of data loggers. We're well known for the HOBO loggers that we make, and we've been around since 1981. We're about 130 employees here in Cape Cod, Massachusetts. And if you happen to be international, as I know many of you are, we have a global network of distributors, and they would be happy to help you configure systems for your applications and provide local support. As you can see in this picture, we have solar panels up on our roof. A good part of our energy is generated by those solar panels. We try to be a green company. So I'm going to start out by doing a little poll question just to get a sense for where you're coming from. I like to understand my audience, so I'm going to, let's see, set this up. And the question is what data loggers have you been using? This just gives me a little sense for your background. And let me start that. So you should be seeing the different answers on your screen now. If you could select all that apply, and that'll give me a sense for where you're at. I'll give you about 15, 20 seconds to read through and enter your choices. Let's see, starting to see a trend here. Couple more seconds. Okay, let me close it here, and let me show you what the results look like, and you can see where you fit in. A good number of you are using our U23 Pro V2 loggers for temperature and RH, so that's good. I'll definitely be comparing the new MX2300 loggers to the U23 series logger, so you can kind of see how they compare. Some of you are using our indoor loggers for temperature and RH, and let's see, some good portion of you using our other HOBO data loggers. So it's all part of the family, so you'll recognize a lot of the features here. So, okay, that's good. Let me go back to the presentation. Thanks for answering that question. And so let me give you an overview of the MX2300s. So many of you that are using the 23 or the U23s will recognize this logger. That was one of the places we started from. Then we recently came out with the MX1101 BLE Temp RH loggers, which use Bluetooth communications. Kind of put those together, put them into a blender, and we came out with the MX2300 outdoor Bluetooth Temp RH loggers. So that's kind of high level. Let me go into a little more details of what that means. So there's actually 5 models in this line of loggers, the MX2300s. 4 of them, the 4 on the left, are the same series of models that we had for our U23. So we have an internal Temp RH sensor version that sells for $170, which is the same price as we sell the U23s for. There's an external Temp RH version for $199. Again, the same price as the U23. Then we have external temperature versions with either 2 probes or 1 probe. And then we added a model that has an internal temperature sensor only. That sells for $110 US. So, again, at the very high level, the goal of these loggers is to provide accurate temperature and humidity measurements in harsh outdoor or harsh indoor environments with convenient wireless data offload with your mobile devices, such as an iPhone or an iPad. So talking first about the wireless communications, because that's one of the things that's quite different about these, is the wireless communications, which has a 100-foot or 30-meter wireless range with your mobile device, which could be a mobile phone or a tablet. This means you can offload data easily from hard-to-access locations. So these the loggers can be deployed in crop canopies, up in rafters, in caves, up in trees, as shown here, and you'll still be able to offload the loggers without having to actually physically access the logger. So it makes it much more convenient to get the data. If you did a breakaway look at the loggers, this is kind of what they look like. Starting over on the left, we point out the start-stop button that's used to start the loggers and stop the loggers, as well as activate some of the other functionality. And actually, I see one of the first question that came in is, how can I turn off the data logger after I finish my work? There's your answer right there. When you can set it up, so, and I'll show you in the software section again, you can set up a stop mode that's based on pushing that button. So you can start and stop the logger with a button push. Also over on the left of this diagram, you can see the artist renditions of the external temperature or the external temperature and RH probes. Just above the button are the status indicators. There's one that's just an operation indicator that tells you that it's logging. And then there's another indicator that's the indicator of an alarm, and I'll talk a little bit more about the alarms later on. Above that is the vent for the internal temperature and RH sensors. So if you have a version that has the internal temperature sensors, they're located in there. Inside the logger, you can see there's a user replaceable battery. To replace the battery, you simply remove 4 screws that are on the back, and then that gives you access to the battery so you can easily replace it. Then you can reseal it up. And also pointed out in this diagram is the mounting holes, which are integrated into the logger housing. So speaking of mounting, the logger is very small. You can get a little bit of a sense of it from the hand here, but the height, if you think in inches, is is only 4¼ inches, and that includes the mounting tabs at the top and the bottom. So, the bulk of the logger is even shorter than that. Makes it very easy to deploy in a lot of different locations. It's less than 1 inch thick, and as I mentioned, it's got integrated mounting tabs, which makes it easy to mount with zip ties or screws, both of which we include with the product. So here's some of the key specs. I know there's a lot of detail here, so let me kind of walk you through it. And you'll see that I'm actually comparing the specifications here to the HOBO U23s, which many of you are familiar with. And you can see the temperature accuracy is very similar, basically 0.2 degrees Celsius accuracy. And in this case, for the MX2300s, we spec that accuracy over a wider temperature range, all the way up to 70 degrees Celsius. The RH accuracy is pretty much the same. The response time has been improved for the 2300s. For the internal temp RH sensors, it's now 17 minutes versus 40 minutes that it was before. And if you're using the external probes, which is, really, if you're looking for a faster response time, you may want to use the external probes. Those have a 4-minute response time for the temp RH sensor, or 3 minutes for the temperature sensor. The memory capacity is double what the U23s had at 42,000 sets of temperature and humidity measurements. Now, battery life, a little bit down in one way, a little bit up in the other. The U23s had a 3-year battery life. If you don't turn on power saving mode, and I'll talk a little bit more about power saving mode in a couple slides, but if you're not using power saving mode, you'll get a 2-year battery life, and then you can replace the batteries after that as needed. But if you turn power saving mode on, then you get a 5-year battery life, and that just means you have to push a button on the logger to offload the data. So it's a little less convenient, but it does give you the longer battery life. We do have a slightly larger battery in here than the U23s. It's a 2/3 AA lithium battery, and because of the wireless communications, that required going to a slightly larger battery to get those battery lives expressed above. The housing is extremely robust. It's got a IP67 rating, NEMA 6, which means that it can be submerged and survive for short amounts of time. So we don't intend it to be used underwater, obviously, but if it should get submerged for a short amount of time, that's not going to damage the logger. And it's also 100% UV rated, so it's definitely designed for use in harsh outdoor environments. The wireless range, oops, I went ahead a little too fast there, is 30 meters or 100 feet, as I mentioned before. Now, the 2300 includes a lot of the logging and alarm features that we've been building into our other MX series loggers. So here you can see the new features in the 2300s versus the U23s. And you can see it's got quite a few different logging modes. You may or may not need these, but let me go through them in case they are of interest. One is it will wrap around when full, and you have a choice. It can either stop when full, or it can wrap around when full and continue to capture the newest data. As I mentioned before, it has a start and stop logging on a button push. So that's one of the neat things about having that button. It does have the visual alarms, and you have 2 modes of operation. You can either configure it to, once it goes into an alarm condition, remember that it went into an alarm condition and continue to flash that alarm LED, or you can have it when it goes back within limits to turn off that alarm indication. So that's your choice. You can independently configure both high and low alarms for each of the sensors in the logger. So you could, if you've got a temp RH logger, you can have 1 alarm for temperature and 1 for RH. Oops, I'm getting trigger happy here. Let me go back to this page. Statistics logging. That's just a way of sampling at a faster rate, and it can record averages over the logging interval. So it can be the min, max, mean, average, and I think the standard deviation over the logging interval. It's got a burst logging mode. This allows it to sample and record at a faster rate when some limits are exceeded. So, for example, you could set an alarm threshold of sorts so that when the temperature goes above that threshold, that it starts sampling at a 15-second rate instead of a 15-minute rate. One feature that the 2300s do not have is multi-rate logging. We found that not that many people use that, so we didn't include that in the 2300s. And it does have a page feature, which means you can press a button in the software, and that will make the LEDs on the 2300 light up, so you can more easily find it. Because this is a wireless device, it needs to comply with local wireless standards in most countries, and we've tested it for compliance in the US, Canada, Australia, New Zealand, and all of the CE countries, all the European countries, that is. And we are considering additional certifications in other countries, so if you need us to meet some sort of local wireless compliance and we don't meet it already, let us know and we'll see what we can do. So now I'm going to switch to the software. This will give you a sense for how you operate these loggers and interact with them. The app that we have that runs on your mobile device is HOBO Mobile, and the newest version that supports these loggers is HOBO Mobile 1.7. And you basically use this to do all the setup for the logger, as well as reading out the data and sharing the data all from your mobile device. Currently, this version of HOBO Mobile 1.7 is only available for iOS platforms, iPhones, iPads, and iPods. We're looking at expanding that in the future, but this is what it supports now. And it is a free download from the Apple App Store. So let me just kind of walk you through the deployment scenario. So the first thing you'll need to do is you're going out into the field and you want to connect to the logger for the first time. This is the screen you'll see, and what it shows is all the MX2300s or other MX series loggers that are within range at the time, so within that 100-foot range. So in this case, there is just one logger within range. So I tap on that bar or that area in my screen, and that'll bring up the main logger screen, which is shown here. We call this the connected screen. And here you can see the logger status, you can see what the current readings are, you can see the wireless signal strength, so you get some basic information. And it's from this screen that you access all the logger functions. So from here you can go to configure the logger, you can read out the data, you can go see full status details, and you can also page the logger, as I mentioned before. And there's some functions across the bottom you'll see for looking at data files, changing your settings, and about. So this is the main logger screen. So now I've gone into the configure screen. So we're kind of going through the first deployment of the logger. So this is where you can assign things like a name for your logger. Here I've entered in Site 8A as the name for my logger. It could be anything that helps you identify that logger. And you can group it into groups. You can tag a location to it, which should be helpful if you're trying to locate this on a map later. Then down below, you set up all the logging information. The logging interval, and this will tell you what the logging duration is. You can set up the start logging mode, which could be a push button start like we've talked about, or it can be on the next logging interval, it can be immediately, or it can be some future time. And then you set up this, how you want it to stop. You can stop it when the logger memory fills. You can stop it based on a button push. There's a few options there. Down below, you really can't see it on this particular screenshot, is you'd have to scroll down to it, but that's where you would set up some of the other logging options, like burst logging could be selected down there. If you want to set up alarm limits, those could also be set up from the configure screen. Once you've set up everything for your deployment the way you want it, you go up in the upper right of that screen, you see the start button, you click on that, and that will download that configuration and start your logger on its deployment. So at that point, it's ready to go. Now, if you want to go out and check the status of the logger while it's deployed, you can use the the status details screen. And here you can see it's showing the temperature and the humidity, it's showing the device identification, and it's got some details down below like the battery level, the amount of memory used, and the fact that it's currently logging. So it's a nice confirmation that things are going okay. And it's also a way of checking that your sensors are still good. If you're getting some wild readings, that may be a sign you need to replace the logger. And it's better to know that sooner rather than later. After you've deployed your logger and you want to offload the data, you use the readout, and then you can go to view your plots, and this is what the plots look like. And you can do this right on your mobile device. So your iPad or your iPhone, you can be looking at these graphs, and you have the ability to zoom in on data, so you can take a closer look at what's happening. So it's very handy to kind of confirm you're getting the data you expect while you're out in the field. Up in the upper right corner of the screen, you'll see some other choices. There's the icon for sharing. If you select that, you'll go to a screen that looks like this, which allows you to select a data format that you want to share your data in. So it could be an Excel format, CSVs, text, or a HOBOware file type, or it could be an image. Once you've selected your file type, then you can select how you want to share that data. And this depends upon what apps you have installed on your mobile device. So you can certainly send an attachment to a message or an email, but if you've got your device configured for sharing via Google Drive, you can share it that way. It ties into the other apps that you have installed on your mobile device. And another option is in the settings for your HOBO Mobile. You can set it up to automatically upload data files to our web-enabled platform of HOBOlink. So you can, and that means that as soon as you're within an area where you've got internet connectivity, it'll automatically upload those data files that you've shared to HOBOlink. So as a matter of fact, I don't even think you have to share data files for this automatic upload. You just, whenever those data files are offloaded, they will be uploaded to the web. And that makes it very easy to access them through the internet by you or anybody else that has access to the particular HOBOlink account. As I mentioned, you can share the data as a HOBO file, and that means that you can open it directly in our HOBOware software. So for those of you who have been using our loggers already and are familiar with HOBOware, you can easily look at the data in HOBOware, which means you can take advantage of all the features of HOBOware, combining data from multiple loggers on one graph, annotations, data assistance such as the growing degree day assistant, data cropping. All these features are available for these files. Another feature that I think is pretty cool about the MX2300s is what I call the pick me function. It's not actually officially called this, but basically what this means is if you've got a pile of loggers in front of you that you're offloading and you're not sure which one is which on your HOBO mobile screen, what you do is you just press the button on the logger that you want to offload, and it will automatically pop up to the top of your logger list in HOBO Mobile, highlight it in green, and then you can tap on that to connect to it and offload the data. It's just a handy way of getting to the logger you want. I mentioned the power saving mode. There's a couple ways this logger can operate. When the power saving mode is off, that enables the full continuous wireless communications, which means you can walk up to it at any time, and as long as you're within range, your mobile device will see the logger, and you'll be able to establish communications and do all the logger functionalities without having to access the logger. That gives you the 2-year battery life. On the other hand, if you're looking to have a more extended battery life and you know you're not going to be out to the logger that often, you can turn power saving mode on. And what this means is you have to push the button on the front of the logger to activate the wireless communications. So in this case, you do have to access the logger to push the button, and this will automatically do the pick-me as well. So if you've got a few loggers in the area, this will make that logger visible. Using the power saving mode, you'll get a 5-year battery life. Let's see. Yeah, I have a question here. Let me address this while it's kind of fresh. The question is, when will software be available for Android? And the answer on that is we are working on that, but I can't promise a time at this point. We've just got a few projects going on at once, and that's one of them. But my recommendation is, right now, plan on using iOS devices for now, and hopefully at some point in the near future, if you prefer to use Android devices, you can switch over to those. And then a similar question that came up is, can you use a laptop to communicate with the logger? And right now, we don't have laptop support. It's largely a software issue because it requires different software on the laptop. A good input, and it is a request we hear quite frequently, but at this time we don't offer that. Here's another question about the location coordinates. I showed you a few slides back that it enters in the coordinates. And the question is, do you have to enter those in manually? No, you don't have to enter in the location coordinates manually, but you do have to have your mobile device set up for sharing its current location. So when you run the app, I forget exactly where it happens, but it'll ask you when running this app, is it okay to share your current location? And you just have to check the box to say yeah, and then those coordinates will automatically show up in that launch screen when you're configuring the logger. Yeah, lots of good questions, and I'll answer one more, then I'll continue on with the presentation. The next question was, can I access the info live remotely? Let's say I need to look at temperature when I am away. Can I log in and see the current temperature from anywhere? And the answer on that is no, not at this time. Again, we're looking at some options there, but and a good input that we do hear from others. But right now, you have to be out there with your mobile device to push the buttons in the mobile software, the HOBO mobile software, to do the readout, get the readings, and upload the data. So once you have the data on your mobile device, it can be automatically uploaded to the internet, but it still requires somebody to go out there in the field. Now, one of the things to keep in mind is if you can't make it out there, because this is a free app, you can have somebody else download the free app and go out and offload the data on your behalf, and then share that data with you. So that's an option to keep in mind. Thanks for those questions. I think it's good to address those. Let's see, burst mode limit checking. This is if you're going to use that burst mode, which is where it can store data at a faster rate when conditions exceed or go below certain limits that you set. This is something to keep in mind for your battery usage. If you're using burst mode, it's actually going to be sampling the current conditions at the burst mode rate. And the reason for that is because you don't want to miss any critical data. If you're, for example, if you're logging at 15 minutes and your burst mode rate is at 30 seconds, it's actually going to be checking the conditions every 30 seconds throughout your deployment to determine if it needs to switch into the faster sampling rate and start storing the data at that faster rate. If you had to wait for the full 15 minutes, you might miss some critical data. But that does affect the battery usage because it is sampling at that 30-second rate. So just a little note of caution there. Solar radiation shields. Depending upon your logger, there's a couple of different ways you could go for solar radiation shields. And of course, anytime you're deploying temperature and humidity loggers outdoors where they can be exposed to sunshine, you definitely need to put them in a solar radiation shield so you don't get falsely high readings just because of the sunlight affecting the temperature readings. So if you're looking for a self-contained system with no cables, then what we'd recommend is one of the two models that have the internal sensors, either the internal temp RH sensors or the internal temperature sensor, and you can deploy those in the RS1 radiation shield or the M-RSA solar radiation shield. Those are basically the same radiation shield, but in one case it comes pre-assembled, so it's with a little different bracket, so it's a little easier to deploy. But in either case, if you're going to deploy it in one of those radiation shields, you have to also order this bracket. We sell for $8. It's just a little plastic bracket that allows that logger to be easily mounted to the top plate of the radiation shield. You can see in this picture here what that looks like. So this is kind of an inside view of what the logger looks like when it's mounted to the top plate in the radiation shield. And you can see it allows good circulation around the logger, so you still get a decent response time. And speaking of response times, if you want to get the fastest response time, then you'll probably want to use one of the MX2300 models that has an external sensor and use it in combination with the RS3-B solar radiation shield. And that's that's a smaller radiation shield, and that combined with the smaller sensors gives you a faster response time. So you can see those response times down in this lower right corner. For the internal sensor loggers deployed in the bigger radiation shield, the RS1 radiation shield, it's a 24-minute response time. That's due to the larger size of the logger, the larger size of the radiation shield, all that thermal mass slows down your response time. And if you're logging every half an hour or even 15 minutes, that's probably still fast enough response time to keep up with what you're monitoring. But if you're looking for a faster response time, you can go to the external sensor versions, and the MX2302, which is with the temperature RH sensors on an external sensor. That's a 5-minute response time, or if you're just using the temperature sensors, those have a 4-minute response time. So considerably faster response time with those. So that's kind of the trade-off there. So as I mentioned, I'm going to talk a little bit about comparing the 2300s versus the U23s, and basically they both have the same measurement performance and pricing, but there are some advantages to each, and I don't know, maybe because it's a new product, there's maybe a few more advantages to the MX2300s, but there's still cases where you want to continue to use the U23s. If you've been using the U23s, and you have the shuttles and you have the software and everything's been working well for you, you may just want to continue to use those. We're going to continue to sell and support those fully, and and that's fine. I still recommend you keep the 2300s in mind for future applications. Another advantage of the U23s is they do have the replaceable RH sensors. So if you're in environment where it's especially harsh and you're finding you need to replace the RH sensors every year or two because of the caustic nature of your environment, you'll probably want to continue using the U23s. The RH sensor in the MX2300s is not replaceable. So, but on the other hand, there are several advantages to the MX2300s. I think we've covered most of these already, but it's good to kind of summarize them. If you want the wireless offload, of course, if you want to use a smartphone for data offload and not have to carry a separate shuttle into the field, if you want to view data in the field without needing a laptop, if you'd like any of those new features that are in the MX series loggers, and if you want the automatic data upload to the internet. Again, to clarify, you've got to actually go out there and offload them with HOBO Mobile, but then that data can automatically go up to HOBO Link. So if you're in a indoor application, you might say, oh, should I use the 1101 or the MX2300s? Basically the trade-off there is the MX1101s have the display, so you can actually see the current readings right on the logger, which is handy in some cases. And the MX1101 has a lower price at $135 for a temperature and humidity logger. But if you need more than a 90% RH range, you're going to want to go to the MX2300s. And certainly the MX2300s are going to hold up much better in any harsh outdoor and even harsh indoor environments if there's a lot of humidity. So it's kind of the trade-off there. If you're looking at temperature only, your choices would be the MX100 versus the MX2305, and you can see there's pretty good price difference. So the MX100s have that advantage, and they're rated IP67, the same as the MX2300. So they're pretty robust, even in splash and harsh indoor environments. But they're not UV rated, so you wouldn't want to use the MX100s outdoors, and they're not as accurate for temperature measurements as the 2300. So if you want the higher accuracy temperature, then you'd want to use the MX2305. Here's a good question. We are just talking about the RH sensors and the fact that they're not replaceable on the MX2300s. And the question is what is the expected life of the RH sensor in the MX2300s? And we basically use the same sensors in the MX2300s versus the U23s. It's just a slightly different pin configuration, but it's the same sensor technology, which has proven to be very reliable in harsh environments over many years of use. It's if it's just a humid environment that you're operating in, I can't necessarily give you an exact number, but I think it'd be very reasonable to expect a 3 to 5 year RH sensor life in even high humidity environments. Again, it's proven to be a very reliable sensor. It's really only when it's been a caustic environment that we find people having to replace them, and that's why we we didn't feel it was necessary to make the sensor replaceable, because not that many people have been having to replace them. Okay, time for me to ask you another question. And just want to find a little bit about what applications you have. I always find that interesting to find how they're being deployed, and then I can share some applications and speak to some common applications as well. So let me come over here to, let's see. I only get 5 choices, so it's kind of, I expect a lot of you are going to probably be in the other category here. If you are in the other category, if you can enter in your application in the question section. That just gives me a sense for your applications, so you don't have to, but if you want to enter it into the questions box, I'll see it here on my screen. So again, I'll give you a few seconds to click which applications best match yours. Interesting. Looks like most people are in. So I think I'm going to close it. Yep. All right. And I'll share with you what your fellow attendees said. And by and far, the majority, almost 2/3 of you are in environmental and climate research. No surprise there. 10% of you are doing agricultural research. I'm a little surprised that's not a little higher, but that's okay. Some site evaluation. We didn't. None of you are in greenhouse management. Interesting. And but maybe greenhouses are part of your research. And other. So let me read through some of that. We've got some folks that are doing IAQ, caves and mines, frost in fields, and museums and historic sites are some of the applications I see. So yeah, thanks for sharing those with me. I'm going to hide that so I can go back to this. And here's a couple of examples of environmental research applications. And these are from actual users of our U23 loggers, so but pretty much the same applications that we expect for the MX2300s. So one user was having issues with the cables on their U23s getting chewed by wildlife, and I'm sure some of you have had that issue. It's always a challenge. There's something about the plastic that some critters out there like, and so with the 2300s, if you're in this situation, you can deploy the logger inside the RS1 radiation shield, and you don't have any cables to worry about. So it's going to provide you a more robust solution, and you can still offload the loggers without having to open up the radiation shield, because you can use the wireless offload capability. Another application is monitoring of little ecosystems. This is the Waquoit Bay Estuarine Research Reserve, which is here on Cape Cod. They are looking at quantifying carbon storage and greenhouse gas emissions in coastal wetlands. And by having the wireless offload, you can offload the loggers deployed in these little micro environments that you're setting up, and you don't have to worry about disturbing those environments, because you can use the the wireless to offload the data. And it also means you're not having to go tramping through any marshes or anything else. You just you want to minimize the impact on the environments that you're studying. Let's see, a few of you mentioned agricultural research. A very common application for our data loggers as well, looking at temperature and humidity conditions during an experiment of different treatments or fertilizations. A lot of times you may need other parameters as well, so you may also be using our microstations. Site planning, I think we had some that were doing this, mapping temperature and humidity for doing frost hour and growing degree day calculations over a potential vineyard area to match the grape varieties, and plan for frost control measures. I think, as I mentioned, some were doing frost management or planning. Livestock and dairy. Quite often there's concern about heat stress in dairy facilities. You want to have happy cows so that they're productive, and and not being stressed. So you want to have the right amount of ventilation to keep them in comfortable conditions. So temp RH loggers are important for that. But yeah, here, let me get some water. But as I mentioned, those can be harsh environments. So in those cases, you may still need to go to a U23 to get the replaceable RH sensor. It really depends upon how harsh your environment is. Greenhouses, we didn't have too many people here doing that, but certainly in general, we have a lot of loggers being deployed in greenhouses, and you can put them at all sorts of locations and easily offload the data as you're walking through the greenhouse with your mobile device. Some other applications, caves, high humidity shipping. You can also use these loggers in conjunction with monitoring indoor conditions, such as temperature and humidity indoors and energy usage indoors versus outdoor conditions, because you know, obviously the outdoor conditions affect how much energy is being used to maintain your indoor climates. And I guess we had some people doing museums, and so that's kind of a variation on this. Is if you're in a museum, you know, in that case you may be looking at either the MX1101s or these loggers, but both are good choices. In both of them work with the same HOBO mobile software. So that's just a few applications and some of the advantages of the MX2300s in those applications. And as you can see, we've actually gone through the slides that I had prepared in advance, but now is a chance to ask any questions that you have that I may not have covered yet. So I'll give you some time to think about those. My sense is that I may have covered most questions because these are in a lot of ways similar to loggers that you're using already. But let me get, you may have some other questions. As you're thinking, I'll mention. Okay, here's a question. Oh, do you need to have Wi-Fi at the field site to use mobile offload? Well, the wireless offload that we do uses Bluetooth low energy, which is built into your iPhone or your iPad. You may not even realize it's there, but all of today's iPhones and iPads include Bluetooth communications, and in particular, the latest version is Bluetooth Low Energy, which is what we use for communicating with our loggers, and it's very efficient. That's why it works well for communicating with data loggers. It doesn't take a lot of power. So that's the communications between the data loggers and your mobile device. So you don't need Wi-Fi for that. Now, then if you want to enable uploading that data, you want to share it, or you want to upload it to HOBOlink, in that case you need to have an internet connection between your mobile device and the internet, and that could be Wi-Fi. You know, if you're in an area where there's Wi-Fi, that's great. Or it could use the cellular communications that's built into your iPhone or iPad. You could use that for your communications as well. So, you know, either one will work for offloading that data from your mobile device. Especially if you're just looking for a mobile device to use as a data shuttle, you're probably best off going out and getting like an iPad that just has Wi-Fi, so you're not having to pay for a cellular plan, and just use that as your dedicated shuttle device for setting up and offloading your loggers in the field. And then when you get back to the office, you just share the data via the Wi-Fi, and it makes a very effective shuttle solution. And there's a question about Android phones. Most Android phones have BLE. Again, we don't have the support for the Android phones yet, but when we do upgrade our HOBO Mobile software, for the Android support for this latest version, yeah, they'll be able to communicate using the BLE as well. Let's see. Just reading through the questions now. Thanks for sending them in. The logger. There's a question here I'm not sure I understand, so I'm going to kind of skip over this and follow up with you. Pardon me while I'm reading through these. I just want to make sure that I can answer them before I start into it. Okay. Yep. Here's a good question. It's is there an ability to download multiple wireless MX data loggers simultaneously? As we are using approximately 40 data loggers, it takes considerable time to select and download and send the files. Yeah, that's a good question. Right now, there's not a bulk offload. You have to select each logger and offload that. That's another good input that we've heard before. Lots of good inputs in this webinar. I learn as much from these as hopefully you're learning from me. And yeah, that's something we're going to be looking into. You do have the ability, once the data files have been offloaded into your mobile device and you want to upload them to the internet, share them with via email, for example, you do have the ability to email them all together. So you can go in and select each of the data files and share them via email together. So once they're in your mobile device, you can efficiently upload all 40 of those data loggers. So, okay, I think, yep, we've got maybe. Oh, here's another question. When the logger is full, how long does it take to download? And I think it's under a minute to download a full logger. So and the offload time is proportional to the amount of data there. So if you've only filled up the logger halfway, then it'll take about half a minute. And I think that's in the specifications, but I seem to remember that it's about a minute for a full logger. All right. Well, I think hopefully we've got most of the questions answered for now. And I wanted to say, if you have any questions, feel free to contact us at any time. We have live people on the phones that are happy to answer your questions. You can call into our 800 number, which is 1-800-LOGGERS. So it's easy to remember. And we also, for you folks that are calling in internationally, you just call in our 508 number. And here's that number. We have application specialist, which you can email at sales@onsetcomp.com. Technical support, we recommend that you go to our website following this link, and that provides a form where you can enter in some basic information that's going to help us support you better. So we recommend you use that as a way of sending emails to technical support. And then the big thing really up here is the website. Our website just has a wealth of information, full product specifications, user manuals, webinars that we've done in the past, lots of training videos where we actually take you through the whole process of giving you a full tour of the software. I give you a quick tour, but there's a lot more functionality built in if you want to use it. So all of that information is available on our website. So definitely we encourage you to use that as a resource. So with that, I just want to say thanks for attending our webinar today. I hope it's been informative for you, and we really appreciate you taking the time to look at our products, and we wish you the best.